Yeah, what's going on, guys? So a different view. I'm sitting down, which is honestly kind of weird because I want to stand up and be fidgety, but I got way too much stuff in the back, so I was just going to give you this view. Anyways, all right, so I was doing a Q&A on Instagram and someone asked a question in regards to how to translate, flat ground velo or flat pull down velo to the mound. And the reason why I didn't want to answer it on the Instagram Q&A is because I really want to dive into this, because this is something that for me personally struggled with, at certain points in my career where I've always had really good arm strength, and I would throw bullpens, I'd throw flat grounds, even in my catch play, ball would be coming out really good, and then I'd get in a game. And I think you guys know from just knowing me and me being vocal about my struggles is like, I would literally go out there and be freaking mid 80s without any idea of like what is going on, like why is this happening? And at the time, I didn't really dive into it as far as like trying to find the solution. Like I identified the problem, I didn't really think about finding the solution because I was too focused on like in 5 days I got to go out and compete again. I was starting at the time. So fast forward, man, like I won't spend too much time on my background, but in 2014 when I got released, it was on me to kind of really get back to my roots and find, like, because I literally wasn't going to have a job unless I started throwing harder. So backs up against the wall in this point in my career where I was like, okay, I got to do anything and everything to figure it out. And the plus side was like, even in high school, when I had gotten drafted, I was a hard thrower and I had a set amount of protocols that I kind of followed ever since I was young that, had me throwing pretty hard. So it was kind of just getting back to my roots and blah, blah, blah. And so along this process of me kind of getting back to throwing harder on the mound, I kind of identified each and every day that the reason for me personally, again, this is going to vary for everybody, but for me personally, going out into a game and being on the mound and competing and throwing against guys, like, for me it was something about like I wasn't necessarily competing against the hitter, right? Like I was always, for me, my mindset was so focused on like the those thoughts that you get in your head sometimes where it's like, don't do this, don't do that, right? Like a very negative connotation, like a negative thought process. And I was so focused on like that I wasn't able to like fully get the most athleticism, power out of myself because I was throwing with this restricted mindset. And it was like, I don't know what happens when you do this in a car, but this is kind of like the thing, my analogy that I just thought of is like, if you're trying to drive a car and like you have 60% on the gas throttle, the right side, but then you have like 40% on the brake, like you're not going to fully get where you want to go with that. So that's kind of how it was for me. And this is something that like I wasn't really thinking about trying to find the solution when I was in season, because again, I was starting and every 5 days I'd go out there and I was just like, dude, I just gotta get through it, And then it was like, it was just a weird process of finding, okay, how am I going to be able to train myself and create as much motion memory as possible for me when I do get out onto the game mound, that it's not even a thought, that I'm just automatically 100 and 110%, full foot on the throttle, like no restrictions mentally or physically. And for me, it was literally just getting back to my roots that have made me successful when I was in high school, when I was drafted high. And it was just a set, process, protocols in place, and really just, focusing on that motion memory and creating that motion memory as far as in your practice, where you do get on the game mound and it's not a thought process of, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z. Like, no, it's just going to happen naturally because of the way you trained. I did a blog post about my pull downs, which further elaborated on how I struggled and why my velocity was down and all that. I'll include that in this post as well for you guys to check out. But for me, like, it was so weird because I'd be throwing flat grounds at like 90, 91, but then I'd get in a game mound and I'd be like 88 with a guy on the box. So what I realized, dude, was like anytime I would just face a hitter, I'd be just restricted, either whether it be, mentally or physically. There was some sort of restriction that was stemming from my mindset that was, like, don't throw a ball, don't do this. And then subconsciously, like when you think that, your body's going to respond to that in the sense of, being like restricted. At least it was for me. Again, everyone's going to be different in how they kind of respond to that. But like I had mentioned before, it was about me trying to identify the solution as far as like, how do I get out of this funk? How do I get my mindset and my mentality, you know, freaking 120% on the throttle? And it was just for me practicing that, because during the season we get caught up in like, you know, the load management of like, okay, if I'm throwing Tuesday, now on, you know, Sunday and Monday, I have to be really, really light because I need to feel fresh for Tuesday. And that's not what allowed me to feel fresh. And that's not what allowed my arm and body to grow. So, you know, it was just, this is why I'm so adamant about talking to people and telling them like, yo, you have to like develop routines and develop protocols that are going to best equip you to be at your very best, your maximum potential. Like, figure that out. And then once you do, you're going to freaking flourish. I'm telling you. That's going to be the problem for a lot of individuals, is like, they don't really be intentional with developing those protocols. They kind of just go with the flow. And then come game time, it's just, this is what you get, you know? So yeah, man, for me, it was definitely a very big thing that was like super eye-opening. I remember when my family came out and saw me that year in 2013, Pops watched like my pregame bullpen, and then he watched my game, and he even mentioned like not even having a gun or a radar or anything. He was like, yo, the ball's coming out really good in your pen, and then you get on a game mound and it's like, what the frick's happening? And it was because like when I was on the pen, or you talk about like when you're in your flat grounds, or you talk about when you're doing your pull downs or your long toss, there's so much freedom that you have, because you're not necessarily like, maybe you are throwing to a target, but you're not necessarily like competing against another person, like a guy in the box. So there's just all of this freedom that you have. And freedom, you know, creates more athleticism. And athleticism, I think you guys know that I'm a huge proponent of. So it's funny when I go back and look at those tapes of me at my worst throwing mid 80s, it was like I was so robotic because I was so restricted. And when you're restricted, man, you're not able to get the most athleticism and power out of yourself. And you know, so for me, it was like, okay, how do I freaking get there? How do I get most power out of myself? And you know, it was just being super intentional with the way that I threw a baseball when I wasn't in a mound. And then hopefully, you know, by the time that I did get back on the mound in a game, I had just established so much motion memory from my training that it was just second nature. You know, I didn't have to think about, okay, I got to really amp up. Like, no, dude, that's just what my arm and body expected to do because I trained it a certain way. And now obviously you have that fine print, right? Where it's like, don't go 7 days a week at freaking 150% and then you're just beat, you're tired. That's how injuries happen. So again, it's like developing that process and that plan for yourself. And then the next thing I would encourage guys with is those who are struggling to, you know, essentially get comfortable facing a guy in the box, like, hammer those reps, man. Like, even in your flat grounds, tell someone to stand in, because it's a different beast that comes out within you when there is someone in the box or there is someone standing there. And just hammer those reps too, because then, you know, say you hammer reps with, you know, a guy in the box during your flat grounds and your bullpens, and then, you know, when you do get on the game mound, it's like you're so used to that already that nothing changes. And that's why I talk about kind of manipulating that environment in your training to better equip you for your games. So hopefully that makes sense. I'd encourage anyone that's listening to this that like wants to really dive in more, that struggles with this. And I encourage you guys to just check out that consultation option that I have. I've had really good success with people that, like, we book a consultation, you call me, dude, we spend 30 minutes on the line, and it's like, yo, what do you struggle with? What have you tried? And then it's just going one-on-one, dude, and trying to figure that sweet spot out for yourself. So I'd encourage you to check that option out. If not, no worries. Hopefully all this free content that I produce helps you guys and you know, gets you better equipped for your journey. But yeah, my butt's tired now, so I'm going to get up and do some kettlebell swings. So appreciate you guys for listening. Share this with anyone that you think could benefit from this, anyone that maybe struggles with not being able to translate that velo in a game. Trust me, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, man. And I think there's kind of a couple different ways to go about it. It's all just about being comfortable, being free, And how do you create that freedom? How do you, who's listening to this, create that freedom for yourself? That's that identification process that you're going to have to go through, because it's tough, man. That's why I always say athleticism trumps mechanics, because if you're free and loose, you're athletic. If you're kind of thinking mechanical, you're a little robotic, a little stiff. It's kind of hard to repeat that way. So hopefully that helps, guys. Much love as always. And if you guys have any questions, my email is on my Instagram bio. Click that message, I think. No, I think it just says email. So click that, shoot your questions. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my podcast for future dope content. Much love, guys. God bless.